computer. Yeah. Hello, welcome to Sisters in Stoke. I am so pleased to have with me today one of my besties, actually. This is going to be a really great chat with Leanne Dinham. Welcome to the show, Leanne. I'm going to read your formal bio, which I always love doing for people. Leanne Dinham is a movement coach, Buffy lover, cat mom, and mace artist. She's a lot more than that too, but we're going to get into all that. When she first picked up a steel mace, she was deep in grief after the unexpected death of her mom. This ancient tool unlocked something primal. She felt the warrior within stir and the storyteller inside her get really excited about a new medium with which to play. Everything changed. Having grown up doing martial arts and playing in bands, flow triggering activities were not new, though she did not know what it was or why it felt so good back then. Nearly a decade into her journey as a coach, now she does. Turns out younger Lee playing with pretend swords was on the right path. Lee coaches rad humans all over the world using tools like steel mace, Indian clubs, and flow ropes, with a focus on exploring movement, developing the skills to step into flow, and having fun. This includes showing up for ourselves and each other, and having a good time while trying hard stuff and learning new things. Leanne Dinham, what are you stoked about?
I'm stoked to be on my very first podcast. Hello.
Hello, I'm popping her podcast cherry, which I'm really excited about. And I'm gonna jump right into something that came up yesterday. Was feeling a bit nervous.
Yes.
Doing this podcast, which obviously it's not nerves about talking to me because we talk to each other like a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. So what were the nerves about? I told you I was gonna ask you about this.
More just like, I think we can have a good conversation a lot of the time, but you know, what if it's a dud?
Yeah, what if it's a dud?
What if when we're actually recording, we think we're so fascinating just on the phone to each other, and now that it's recorded, then nothing happens and it's crickets. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen either. No. And I also think that that's always a risk of doing a podcast. I mean, I'm leaping into a genre that's, you know, it's pretty saturated right now. So this is not something that's like highly unique and a new medium that we're all kind of exploring. But what you and I both know as avid podcast listeners is that for storytellers like us, having an opportunity to share and to listen to other people's stories is a really powerful tool when it comes to healing ourselves and connecting to humanity, which for those of us who have lived through lockdowns here in Victoria has been really, really important to do. So the very first thing I want to ask you about is, for those people who don't know, what's a steel mace?
A steel mace. A steel mace, the way it is now, is an offset tool. It is used for movement practice and exercise. I have one right here. Let me just step off screen and show those of you watching. So it's about 1 meter long. This one is 10 pounds or 4.5 kilos, all the weights at one end of it, and then it is on a long hollow handle. So it's offset, and it is, I guess, a derivative and in the line of Persian meals and garters from India that are made of concrete with bamboo sticks. And so there's a long history of the shape and the tool. And this is the new iteration of it, I guess. So nothing new under the sun, but new for movement culture in a way.
New for movement culture. So, I mean, it's an excellent tool of fitness. Just for anyone who doesn't know already, Lee was actually the first Australian, I believe, coach to be qualified in Steel Mace Flow. Is that correct?
Yes, to teach classes. One of the first. I think it was maybe one of the first two. So
yeah,
exciting.
And then Lee is my coach, was my first coach, one of my coaches now. I'm lucky to have a few, which is a great chance to learn from different styles, and I learned from her coach and things like that. Lee also was my mentor and my coach to help me prepare to do my Steel Mace Flow certification. And the reason that I connected with you so much is because I had a very similar experience the first time I picked up a mace. I saw it on Instagram and thought, oh yeah, that looks like hot shit, and like everyone using them was like oiled and ripped and, you know, like that kind of
Very
thing.
ripped, yeah.
Like everyone was super hot and sexy.
And it looks cool. Everyone looks cool when they do it.
They do look cool. And I mean, it looks fucking cool. And as a child who also loved to play with swords and pretend weapons and fight bad guys and all of that kind of stuff, I was like, this is great. I ordered it. It came in the mail. I picked it up. I was like, holy shit, this is hard. I put it down. I didn't touch it again for probably a year. You know, which is a bit of a pattern of mine sometimes, revisiting hobbies over time. Then I heard about you through a mutual friend, and you and I clicked immediately. And when I was able to express to you somewhat vulnerably the experience I had the first time I got my hands on a mace, you were like, holy shit, me too. Like, that is what it's about for me. So that is what I would really like for you to share with people. We've covered the kind of fitness aspect of it, offset training, rotational training, multi-plane movement. I mean, it's wonderful as a fitness tool for that. You're not just moving in this kind of linear plane of movement and building strength in one way. But beyond that, what's the next level to
beyond that? There's something magic. There's something magic about holding something that is fashioned in the style of a weapon, that was used as a weapon. I get emotional even talking about it.
Yeah, I've got tissues right here because I had to go and run and get them because I was like, my odds of crying during this episode, either from laughter or from like grief and emotion, I was like, it's high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's I found Steel Mace Flow at a time when I had lost the ability to find joy in movement.
Yeah.
I had been a trainer for say seven odd years. And then my mum died unexpectedly 3 years ago now. And once she died, after about a month, I tried to get into training again. You know, all right, where do we start? Let's do the process. Or what I might normally do if I fell off the wagon, I would, all right, here's an old kettlebell thing. Here's an old barbell workout. I'd go down, I'd attempt to do it and fail. It was too heavy. It felt terrible. Nothing was working. It made me feel worse. And not to mention like the weight of grief.
Yeah.
Barely being able to stand. Why am I going to put a barbell on my back with 60 kilos and then do squats? Oh, you're rising up again. Yeah, it's not going to fucking work at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I fought with it a little bit. Like, you know, there was 1 or 2 days doing it. Nah, dip, another week. Trying again, 1 or 2 days. Nope, not quite again. And then I was looking online, much like you, and I saw Leo Savage moving a mace, slinging that fucking thing with such fucking beauty.
Yeah.
And
strength, right? Like it's beauty and strength.
You can see how much he's attached to it when he moves.
Yeah.
The artistry, the connection. And being in the fitness industry as a fitness professional, it can be really sterilizing.
Yeah.
You know, you spend a lot of your time trying to get the results for people and writing programs and this and that. And, you know, like, how does it work? The mechanical aspects of it. And then along the way, the heart or the artistry or the play gets pushed aside for other times. Like, no, we need to get a workout in.
Yeah. Need to get my heart rate up.
We need to get a workout in. We need to get my heart rate up. It needs to sweat. It needs to be hard, or else it's point. Or else, what's the point? And that's a mindset that I had. Then I couldn't do that. And I had to reorganize how I viewed myself. I was not a person who could do those things right now. So then we talk about like the descent.
Yeah.
Then we see Leo, order a mace online, and then search Google to try and find a coach in Australia. Doesn't look like there's anybody in Australia with a mace at the time that I was looking. So I messaged Leo. I said, hey, is this good for people who've never picked up a mace before? Like, I need to know somewhere to start. he sent me an actual video and was like, hey, fuck yeah, like do it over Instagram. Like, this is the thing you need. Like, it's good. It's great. I got it. I found within it, once again, just a new approach. It's a new approach, the way that the team works at Steel Mace Flow. It's a new, it was new to me, right? And that's the most important thing at the time, is that it was what I needed. All of a sudden, it was about this light thing that you can pick up and it's not going to weigh you down. And you can breathe and you can move in any plane of motion you want. And once you know the basics, the beauty of being able to put on your headphones and just run through what you know, all of a sudden turns into 3 hours out in the oval, moving almost consistently.
Yeah.
And that was months all of a sudden. And I couldn't move before that. And then all of a sudden I couldn't put this thing down.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I started. It coincided a lot with the very first lockdown in Melbourne, which I'm really fortunate, because I also took a chance and messaged a stranger on Instagram that I really liked the way that he moved, and I knew he was one of the coaches for Steel Mace Flow. And I messaged him, and he turned out to be the fucking best person in the world I could have messaged.
Say his name. We got to give him a shout out.
Jeffrey
Ox. We will be tagging
Jeff
him.
Oaks. Fuck, man. Between what Leo produced and how what Jeff's created, and how he can pass that on and teach it in his way too, like, fuck, it's just amazing. Like, it's a fucking rad practice. Everyone I've met who's picked up a mace is just fucking happy to see someone else with a mace, and that is a fucking amazing community. There's nobody's like trying to be cool. Everyone's actually really cool because they're fucking nice and they just want to move with a mace, and they're happy to see that you have one.
They love it. And I mean, people, the looks that you get when you use it in public, people are so curious about it, you know? And I think that kind of thing, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, it would have bothered me. I would have been like, oh, people are looking at me. And now I'm like, they're probably just jealous. And I don't mean jealous in a mean way. I just mean, when I see someone now in public playing a sport that's unfamiliar to, or doing any kind of a flow activity, in particular skateboarding, roller skating, I'm so grateful that I have so many different opportunities to witness the way that we can move our bodies, and that my own understanding of movement and my relationship to my body, which I want to get into in a minute, because you and my mace practice, and Jeff, because, you know, this is where I know this isn't a martial art, but I think of this very much as a lineage. You know, you are my coach and mentor. He is your coach and mentor. He is also my coach and mentor. But there is this kind of passing down. I haven't had a lot to do with Leo directly, you know, because that's not kind of where I came into the practice. But for me to find mace at a time where I was having to dramatically shift my relationship to my body, and that, you know, that process has taken 10 or 15 years. I've spoken before publicly about the fact that I dealt with disordered eating for most of my life in some form or another, to varying degrees. And, you know, I got really quote unquote healthy at times, running long distances and like tracking my food, but the shame and the attachment to that. And then at some point a few years ago, you know, the lockdowns were a big part of it. I kind of went, fuck it all. I'm just going to eat what I want and go with the flow and not move. And there is this, you know, you and I have talked about the quote before about there's a balance somewhere between deprivation and discipline, and carelessness and indulgence. And I tend to swing to those
wildly to the outside,
to the other. And, you know, a huge part of our friendship to me has been kind of pulling each other back towards the middle sometimes and going, hey, now, like there is this sweet spot in here that you're allowed to come to. But I found mace at a time where I was suddenly there was, there was no attachment to what I could lift or, what numbers I was putting up or how fast I could do things. Having come from CrossFit, and I was part of a box that was super supportive. I'm not an elite competitor. I've scaled the shit out of everything. So it wasn't that, but I'm very competitive with myself.
Yeah.
And to me, my experience in the Mace community, and I know this might not be the same for everyone, because like any community, there can be, tricky bits to work through, but it's been so highly individual in terms of like literally all I have to do is show the fuck up. That's it. That is all I'm being asked to do as part of this practice, is to show up and be willing to be vulnerable and to move my emotions with my mace. And some days I don't even do that. Like there's times in a class where we're working through a flow and I'm like, I did some 360s because like I don't want to do the flow right now. I'm going to sit on the floor and breathe for a minute because all I have to do is show up. And I needed that the last couple of years. And that has been a huge part of reminding myself that it's actually really safe for me to feel pleasure in my body, to use my body as a tool for joy and for expression, and to fucking have fun and to try new things and to, sometimes accidentally hit yourself with a very heavy thing in the head while you're trying a new trick or whatever it is. But I would love to hear a little bit about, because we obviously, it's like 8 podcast episodes. If we're like, talk about body image and being a woman in the world, we can't get into the whole thing. But I know that Mace and this practice has also been a huge part of that for you. So that's what I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to kind of add to that as well, your experience of when you picked up the mace. Do you think, because it was for me, the fact that it is online, you are not in a class, literally next to people, looking at the person beside you, comparing, looking at the person to the left, looking at the person to the right, like watching the person in front, being like, fuck, I'm not doing it like they're doing it. But you're watching the screen, you're doing your best, you're in your own environment, and there's this permission to like, it's your class. You can do it, like you're on mute, you can swear, you can do whatever you want right now, but you can also buy in as much as you want. And I think that was the beauty of it for me as well, is that for as outgoing as I am, I'm one of those quiet until you get to know me and then, oh Lord, you can't shut me up type of people. So it also goes in, if I'm in a group class that I'm not in charge of, I'm not the most outgoing there. I'm only like outgoing if I'm the boss in situations a lot of the time. Otherwise, I just like to watch, because I really, I end up just viewing people and enjoying being there. But that also comes with comparison and also the way that people like to push themselves. It might not be the same, like as much as you want to push yourself on a certain day. And I think that was a lot of the value in it as well. So if I could, like, I'm trying to, keep it in a container here. It's kind of like the purpose of movement went from like, lift more than you did last week and show up more times than you did last week, and change will have to happen because this change is what we want. And it turned to, how do you feel today? Do you want to move with that, or do you want to just maybe just move your body? You angry today? Do you want to use that anger in your flow, in your movement? Like, how can we get this out? How can we breathe? And the beautiful part about being able to step into any class, it's like you said before, like there's no kind of, unless you walk into a class that's called advanced, but if you just show up for a Steel Mace Flow class and it's, kind of all levels, I think I must have heard it on one of the early podcasts that Leo did, but he's like, I should be able to teach any flow to any person on the first day.
Yeah.
Like a version of it. Like I'm not saying that you'll be able to single arm do things, but I should be able to teach you a way to hold the mace with 2 hands, maybe to execute a movement like what we need to eventually get.
Yeah.
So you can join in, so you can be a part of it in your own way.
Yeah.
And that was really, really exciting for me, like a really good challenge. Like, But I have to, if I want to share this with people, the idea is you give them what they can do. Like that's kind of your job too. Like, yeah, I'm there to kind of share something and share a moment, but I'm also there to like help them get to a place where they can find, their push just beyond their boundaries. It's repeatable for them, but they're pushing, and then they can hopefully get into flow with some more practice. It's not a thing that happens initially, but it's something that once you get there, you wonder how you moved without it.
Like, where have you been all my life, kind of thing.
And that means that working out didn't have to be about a certain thing anymore, because I wasn't punching a clock. I wasn't like punching a time card, like showing up to work, fucking hating it, clocking in, clocking out. Is that enough? I literally couldn't put it down. I was like, I'm going outside, headphones on, and especially when we had lockdowns. Oh, I get my 2 hours outside. I was literally moving a mace for the whole 2 hours because I couldn't put it down. And that doesn't make you healthier all round. Just enjoying movement more, practicing more varied movement. And I think that's why I've had also physically less ailments in the past 3 years. I've barely gone to, see professionals like osteos and myos and stuff. Well, one, because they were closed, but also I haven't needed to because of the way I've been training. Moving, the way I've been moving has kind of allowed for flexibility in that. It doesn't matter anymore.
No. And look, you and I have spoken about that heaps of times. The second I stop moving my mace, I have a lot of injuries that kind of crop up. And I know that for me, and look, and I'm careful about it. I'm not stupid with it. I don't attempt things if I don't feel up to it. I'm good at checking in with my body. But that style of movement, like we talked about before, and moving in those 360 degrees, and exploring all sorts of different kinds of planes of movement, that if you're coming from a more traditional fitness environment, you can 100% almost guarantee that you haven't explored certain planes.
You haven't been doing them,
or very rarely, or like, I mean, even in a gym where their programming is very varied, if you only go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you miss Tuesday, Thursday, and those were the days that they were doing, lateral movements or whatever, then you miss out on so much. Whereas with the mace, generally speaking, in almost every mace session, you're going to move in all of those directions. And what that showed me was where my weaknesses were. And I don't mean that in a weakness is in a judgment kind of thing, but like
where the asymmetries are.
Yeah, where was the asymmetry? Where was my strength really differentiated? Where was my balance really different? And then the other thing about mace training that just like lit me up was the brain challenge of moving my upper body one way.
It's choreography, isn't it?
It is choreography. And that, for the dancer in me, again, to be able to start to explore something that had once been such a love of mine, but had then come with so much judgment about the way I looked, or being too tall, or not good enough, and all of those kinds of things. A lot of that judgment was heaped on me by me, like my own worst enemy, and I can acknowledge that. But to be able to have fun with those things. And now as a coach, when I choreograph a flow for a client and I get to teach them this flow that I've created, and watching it be able to come together, I just find that, like, it's just thrilling to me to kind of find that happening.
It pushes it pushes it past a workout, and it brings like your imagination into it, and you can play again. It's magic.
And that was actually, that was the thing I remember when I read your website the very first time. There was something on there where you talked about the different archetypes that show up to play with the mace. So like, do you want to be the child and play? Do you want to be the artist and express? Do you want to be the rebel and fight? Like, which is the next rabbit hole I would love to jump down with you because, again, these are all the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about with each other, is how movement, and I'm broadening it beyond just mace because I don't think it has to be just mace. I know for mace, for me, there was a definite, like the first time I used the mace, I think it was when I was doing, I'm trying to remember. I think it was when I started to learn uppercuts. Probably.
It usually is.
Yeah.
It usually is. People,
and like long stabs and some sword transitions and stuff that I had a very, very visceral experience of, oh, I've done this before, you know, and knowing parts of my ancestral lineage I potentially have, but that energy was in there for me for that. And I was able to really start to embrace that. And then it opened up this door to start to explore these different archetypes that are so much a part of my own personal journey and the work that I do with women as a coach. I mean, that's really kind of a cornerstone, archetypes and narratives that I'm constantly talking about. And I know that's been a huge part for you. So I think what I'd like to ask you, if you can put it into words, because I find it hard to put into words sometimes, but for people who are listening to this, who are like, oh, I just go to like F45 and like get sweaty and stuff, which is fine. Like if you love that, if that floats your boat and feels,
or if you don't care and you just need to show up somewhere and fucking punch the clock, that's like, totally fine. Like, but there are people.
Yeah. And we're not judging that in any way, shape, or form, because really movement needs to be something you love. It needs to be something that makes you feel good. But if you have noticed that your movement practice over the last couple of years is lacking something, right? And it's just this other to-do on your list, and it's a chore, and it's drudgery.
It's in the way.
It's in the way. You're not doing it.
Moving my body is in the way.
It's bringing up feelings of shame or guilt or not good enough. Like it's just not something you're finding yourself excited to go engage with. And you're looking to begin to expand that. But this is all a bit new to you, to maybe consider this idea that movement can actually be something, like it can be a practice. It can actually
touch your heart.
It can touch your heart, right?
And I feel like it sounds like, I mean, I'm reading this book called Cultish, and it talks about the language of fanaticism.
We sound weird.
And I'm like, oh, lordy.
Yeah.
Well, but it also talks about like, you know, friendly cultish kind of things. And like, yeah, fucking A, like different types of movement culture are like, we adopt a certain language. We end up really fucking into it. And that's, my partner's even said it, that I can be really full on with how much I'm into it. And maybe maybe just breathe a little.
It's like
people are like, whoa.
In CrossFit, they call it mixed marriages when one person's a CrossFitter and one person's not, right? And like it's like an ongoing joke about like, here's how to deal with a CrossFit mixed marriage. And I guess like there's probably mace mixed marriage. But you and I have just started, you know, we're having an affair on the side where we can talk about fucking mace all we want, which is amazing. So
well, I think that it's helped out both our relationships that we're able to like get on Zoom and talk mace and move and
swing the mace and just go around with it. So the question I want to ask though is for people who are, I guess, being introduced to a concept of intuitive movement, essentially is kind of what we're talking about, and working with not only your physical energy, where are you at in your menstrual cycle, how much water have you had, did you poop today, did you sleep, all of that kind of stuff is really important, especially like I'm 43. That's become more and more important to my training and my recovery from training as I've gotten older and entered perimenopause. But also emotionally, how you're engaging with that movement practice, and then the desire that creates to show up and continue to kind of play. Explore. So when you talk about showing up and going, ooh, and like, using the anger as an example, because that's a really good one. So if I go to pick my mace up and I'm like, I'm so angry, you can go hit a tire. Like I can use that anger.
I can use both like the crushing my hands toward each other, imbuing all my tension into it. I can create that attention from the floor all the way up. So we have like our standing structure and creating those lines of control.
Yeah.
Maybe I might like think about the things that are pissing me off while I'm doing a prayer switch, moving the weight from side to side. I might add a squat. I might do those squats until I feel like I cannot do those squats anymore, being really angry and really stepping into that anger.
Yeah.
And then it's time which is really rad that you kind of, it feels more natural once you've been moving for longer. And this might seem kind of crazy right now to say, I've put all the tension into the mace, right? And then to release it, I'm going to do some sword swings because they're going to fling those bad thoughts and bad intentions and bad vibes, shoot it at the tail of the mace, out into the world. It's going to dissipate. It's out of here.
Yeah.
And then I can follow it up with some 360s, which is circling the orb around myself, making a heart with my hands, showing some love, creating an aura. And whether you want to think of a 360 as and creating an aura of protection or a beacon of love that you are shooting out, or a fucking protective dome that you are locking shit down in, like whatever you need to visualize. I think Steel Mace Flow cracked it for me because I found it really, really hard to meditate.
Yeah.
And this is moving meditation. Like you put the intent behind the movement, and then we have more than just working out.
Yeah. Working in, you know, and really
on.
And working on.
And play.
And it's play. I mean, at the end of the day, and I've had some shitty mace sessions, I'm not gonna lie. You hear me all the time pick up my mace and be like, apparently I've never done a 360 before. It feels, or like, have I picked up my heavy mace by accident? Nope, this is my normal one. But it's still more fun.
And that goes into the thing of like the mace hasn't changed, but you've changed.
I've changed, right? And that goes back to all the physical and the emotional things that I'm looking at.
Which is the other cool thing about it, is that once you get into Steel Mace Flow, it's not a game about, can I do this with this weight? Okay, now I have to go up. Wait. Can I do this with this weight? Okay, it's time to go up. Nobody's talking about, like, no one gives a shit what weight you're using. They're just like, hey, does that feel nice? Awesome. If you need a different one, change it.
I've only seen it once, like a couple times in comments where people have been like, hey, what weight is that? And other people almost always immediately respond like, who fucking cares? And I'm just like I always think that's really funny, right? Because who cares? No one cares. You can challenge yourself, great, but
you can kind of tell when you're watching from like how it moves. But the rad thing about this community, and the rad thing about the women in this community and the smaller statued people, humans of this community, are that the standard size is a 10 pound, so it's 4.5 kilos. Everyone uses that. That is everyone will flow with that at some point. Probably 75% of people that are flowing are using that weight.
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest, buffest dudes and the smallest women, like fucking rocking it out. And that's like
everybody's sweating
cool
by the end of the flow. And so for people who are listening, who are like, you know, on their phone right now, ordering, like, where do I order this mace thing? Who are already ready to sign up to join our cult, please. We'll have our details at the end.
Don't overestimate the weight.
Sorry?
Don't underestimate.
No. Yeah, don't look at the 10 pounds and be like, oh, I'm gonna get the bigger one because I can bench, 60 kilos and I can squat 100. Like, it doesn't translate the same way. So please just start with a 4 or a 4.5 kilo. I think you can it's only 4s available right now.
Your elbows and tendons and shoulders will thank you.
They will. Next question though.
I don't think I'm answering these questions, but we're having a good talk.
You are answering these questions. This is how it goes, right? Of the archetypes that show up, because you have been very much, I mean, look, I was about to say, you've been on a heroine's journey. We're all fucking on a hero's journey or a heroine's journey, whether or not we acknowledge it.
Whether or not we've figured it out yet or not, right?
And whether or not we're like, actively seeking support and guidance and maps to actually help us through this, right? And building communities.
Or actively making all the tabs in the world.
My stacks, right? They're all highlighted in dog-eared, okay? We'll compare notes.
Love it.
But you are vocally on a heroine's journey and using the language of that to describe the things that you've moved through in the last year, particularly since the death of your mother.
Yeah.
You have been a seeker for long before that, based on conversations you and I have had about who we were when we were youth and when we were younger and all of those kinds of things. But as is almost always the case, when it comes to that descent and that part of the heroine's journey, it's almost always the dark night of the soul. So it's
Oh
almost
yeah.
always some kind of a crisis or something like that. And I would love it if you would share a little bit about how that framework of the heroine's journey has helped you heal. And when I say heal, healing is really just, continuing to step towards who it is that we wish to be in this world. So this
Yeah.
notion of like, oh yay, I'm healed, I've reached the end of the heroine's journey. Guess what?
Oh no,
Get to
it's
the end
cyclical.
and they're like, have a cup of tea and here's the map for the next one. Like fucking off you go. So
yeah, I think like I'd like to describe like I had a really great counselor therapist who was totally on my page. She was the right person to start introducing me to a few of these things, which innately I knew. But then once I read it, I was like, oh, I already had it. I know this in my brain and in my soul already. And I think that's the storyteller in me was just like, oh, snap. Like, whoop, we got a bit of a freeze there. That's okay. I'm going to pause.
Oh my goodness, we're pausing. The video's paused. Oh, you're back. Yay. Okay.
Okay.
Come on, Melbourne internet. Hang on.
That's all right. So I think once I realized there was a formula for it, like I was hugely into film and television and still am into movies and shows. But when I was growing up, that was what I wanted to do. Yeah. Be it acting or storytelling or like actually compiling things. So I was heavy into media, making things like studying the themes of movies and stuff. So I heard about Joseph Campbell's like hero's journey. It's pretty unmissable. It's how you study film. No, I was at uni for that. No one fucking told me about the heroine's journey, did they?
Yeah, no.
They need to. We've got the one for the boys. Luke Skywalker's on his way. Off you go.
We'll just make it pink and give it a month out of the year, and you can have that one.
And I think once I read it and was like, holy fucking shitballs. Yeah. And once the chapters reading out and like calling me out personally, how rude. I've never been so finger pointed by a book. Almost never. I can't off the top of my head think of another book that's like, ow.
Yeah.
Ouch. And and that goes to things like even like what is the pushing your mum away when you're younger. My mum was in abusive relationships when I was younger. So I kind of had that like, I can't trust mum. Women make bad decisions. Yeah. Like, that's too much. Okay, I can't be vulnerable in that way. Boom, boom, walls go up, identification with the masculine. Yeah. Then we go on the path of the father's daughter. And then we're doing that. I did taekwondo growing up. My dad did taekwondo. I was at his meets as like a 3-year-old. And then as soon as I was old enough that I was allowed to join in I was going like taekwondo. I never did dance because I think it was too girly. Yeah. I did aerobics. I think we actually just briefly spoke about this story. I did aerobics when I was in primary school. And it was like this really cheesy, like do aerobics on stage and you do a little routine and then like all the schools do it. And I had this vivid memory. And this is like 9 or 10, right? Like a little girl. Vivid memory. All the teams' pictures, like little headshots, are on a notice board at school, and a group of kids are looking at it. It's maybe 60%, 65% boys and girl, and then the rest were girls. And they're looking, and for some reason, the boys have taken upon themselves to point at each of the pictures, and you're either ugly or fat. Yeah, those are the only 2 options.
Yeah, there's no good options.
And like, but why do we even need to point that out or say that anyway is absolutely beyond. Yeah. Children are cruel, right? Yeah. But I remember going, well, fat. Okay. I'm the fat one. All right. Well, better like start eating less.
Need to shrink.
Which I was never good at. So that's good. I've always liked food too much to, thankfully, ever have an issue, even if I was trying to actively have an issue, unfortunately. But yeah, it's something that sticks, hey?
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, those are those narratives that haunt us. That
That
moment.
little girl,
Yeah.
like I think that's who I get sad for.
Yeah.
And you get sad for that little girl.
You do. And you you and I recently had a conversation last week when you became an auntie for the
Yeah,
first time
so exciting.
of a beautiful niece. And you were expressing, your excitement overall
But
about
also
being
like,
an
oh
auntie, and
shit.
also like, oh shit, you're a girl in this world, because you and I are both very much aware that it's not only the external systems of oppression that we need to be aware of and that we need to be actively working towards dismantling. And I'm talking about everything from the gender pay gap to diet culture to the sizing on women's clothes to the cosmetic, and like there's that out there. Then we have the patriarchy, which is both external, internal, in terms of it being ingrained in people, and the maintenance of those systems is this other thing that we have to be aware of and fighting against. And then there's our the call is coming from inside the house, the internalized
Oh yeah,
misogyny, which is actually
the spiciest.
the spikiest. And that has been, I think that was probably a conversation that I remember that being for me, a real moment in our relationship where I was like, she gets it. She gets me, because I'd been having this conversation about pitting women against women and this whole, like, I'm not like the other girls, and this kind of thing. And someone had shared a meme and tagged me in it. And I was like, no, dude, that's like, I'm not cool with that.
Kind of went past that.
Yeah. And I remember telling you about it and you being like, oh no, that's not cool. And I was like, okay, I can have this conversation with her. And that recognition, as you just spoke about pushing the mother away,
Pushing the feminine away. Can't
which
trust
for
that.
me didn't happen. I think I adopted the masculine very early in life. And then, because my mom was always quite physically close to me until very recently when she moved back to Canada, um and I'd had children by that point, it was quite a wrenching apart
Yeah.
of us in terms of how I didn't realize until she was gone how much I'd never like truly stepped into motherhood as like this thing that I'm just like, oh God, I have to be the adult now, really, and had
Yeah.
continued to rely on her emotionally. And that's been very painful, but really important to be able to kind of work through that. And it's a constant battle for me to be able to identify and embrace those masculine parts of myself, which are so necessary to the lifestyle that I live, in terms of like my organization skills, managing my kids and their needs and appointments, and like just the sheer volume of tasks that are on my plate. And then also allowing myself to soften into flow. And Mace and flow in particular has been this other reminder for me of how we can create a structure.
Yeah.
But the creation of that structure, which for me for so long, it was like, oh, routine, oh, discipline, like I don't like it, but I actually fucking love it, because within the creation of that structure, I then am actually able to let myself go, because I've created these kind of parameters to work within, which is obviously a huge part of creating a flow state.
Yeah.
I know that you are a bit of a flow, what would you call yourself, expert? I think you're a bit of a flow expert, in terms of you have a lot of knowledge about, I guess, the ingredients and the elements that kind of come into it. But the first thing I want to ask you about, because this is that, like, I'm very conscious of time. I've committed to trying to keep, I know.
No idea what the time is.
I know it doesn't matter. But something I'm curious to hear about, I guess, because one of the things that I see over and over and over and over again with my clients and with my female friends in our 40s is there's been, especially during lockdowns as well, it happened a lot. There's been a real return to things that we loved as girls.
Oh
So
yeah.
whether it's like roller skating or playing an instrument, and when you get to do it in your 40s, when you've reached the point, or your 30s, or whenever it happens for you, but when you get to do it a little bit older, where you've reached this point where like you really can't be stuffed worrying about what people think of you or how you look doing it, like the
Yeah.
freedom and the liberation that creates is just like so insanely delicious. And the reason I do the work I do is because I can look around and see that most people have not achieved that. Most people have not actually experienced that. Most people I know are still very caught in this.
They're still showing up to work out, to change something that's wrong, that needs to be fixed,
right?
Rather than showing up to see what they can do today and see if maybe they can do a little more tomorrow, or do it differently tomorrow, or continue to find ways to find joy. And I think that's what I'm trying to do now, and that's what I'm, trying to help people do, is just be more flexible with the ways that you express your fitness or your movement. It doesn't have to look a certain way because it did 5 years ago. It doesn't have to look a certain way tomorrow because you did this thing yesterday.
Yeah.
But if you show up for yourself, in kindness and in this way of look, I'm only going to be in my body for a finite amount of time, but also it's probably way longer than you think.
I think about that sometimes. I'm like, I have so much life left, probably. Look,
I always kind of thought I wouldn't make it to the age I am now. And now that I am, I'm like, ooh, all right.
I need to invest in the infrastructure here. Damn.
Yeah, oh, no one's doing this. Ooh, we have to plan for a future because we appear to have one now. What? Isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah.
And I say that jokingly as well, but also no, not really.
Yeah, it's true.
Lots of people don't really think they're gonna make it, and
or they just don't do the maths, right? You don't actually think about one of the women I've worked with as a nutrition coach, or her company, she talks about if you're only 30, then you probably have 70% of your life left, because the average life expectancy is continuing to increase. Our medical interventions at end of life are continuing to get better and better.
And I want to keep doing cool, fun.
That's exactly it. I don't want to just be I'll be pretty happy to check out, I think, when I
want to be able to do different cool things when I'm 40 that I couldn't do when I was 30.
Yeah, and I can.
For me, is I want to do different cool things that I couldn't do now. It doesn't have to be the same things better. That's kind of reductive too. It doesn't matter who. Oh, great, you do it yourself. I don't really care in that either. Unless I'm having fun. Yeah. But I think that those kind of the goals change now. The goals, it's so different after finding flow, because it's turned it into more of an enjoyable thing, like playing music was when I was younger. Yeah. It used to be the same thing. I used to put my headphones on, or take my old boombox and stack of CDs down to underneath the house, my headphones on, be behind my drum kit, and I'd be there for 3 to 6 hours. Yeah. That was fucking flow. I didn't know it back then because nobody was using fancy words to say that's what happened. Yeah. But now that I'm older and I'm rediscovering these things, it's awesome that now I see it everywhere, because it is everywhere, and it's a skill that can be built upon. Yeah. And I think it's something that it's not Steel Mace Flow as well. I got to say that there's the practice of flow and flow state. Steel Mace Flow is what this movement practice is called. Yeah. But you can get into flow with absolutely anything. You can get into any tool you fucking want, really. It takes a few ingredients. You need to be working at a level a little bit higher than your capacity. If it's a repetitive thing, that's going to help you too, because you're going to be able to just get better at that same thing and get on a bit of a loop, right? You're gonna have full attention on it. Yeah. Music can help. Yeah. Doesn't have to be there, but it can. For me, it fucking super, super helps. And you just you move until you're not thinking about the move anymore. Yeah. And then you are the move. You are the movement. Yeah. I said to my coach Jeff one day, after 2 weeks of really intense practicing and stuff, and I came to him and I'm like, I've made this new flow. I've been practicing a lot on the battle steps, which is footsteps and movement for the flows, right? So it's just different ways of moving your feet and being high on your toes or low. And I came to him and I said, I've made a flow that doesn't even have the mace. It's like you are the mace and you create the mace, and then the mace is in your hands, and then it exists because you have imagined it and brought it into reality. Yeah. And like, we had a good laugh and went like, I love that this is the coaching relationship that I have now. It's not
That's
like
a normal conversation
what
to have.
Was your PB, or did you get all the squats in? Like, did you get that number? Oh, did you not? Did it fail? Okay, how many? What was your heart rate? No, it's like, man, I had a breakthrough. I am the mace.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuff that would sound totally wacky.
You end up saying things like, be the mountain goat. Like, be tall and strong and have steady footing on high mountains. One of the things was as well. Like, so yeah, it's really cool. Like, everything's cool, Megan.
Everything is cool. If you make things cool. If you let me rephrase that, because this is probably a good place to kind of end on. Everything is cool if you fucking let stuff be cool.
Yeah, man, buy in. More people need to buy in. Yeah. Fucking buy into joy. Stop being too cool. Like,
yeah. Yes. Okay, done. Like that's the end right there. But like, in all seriousness, I mean, that is really the note that I want to leave it on. But we buy into fear. We buy into anxiety. We buy into comparison. We buy into shame. We buy into guilt. We buy into pretty much everything. We buy into financial comparisons, and we buy into consumer culture, literally. And we need to really start buying into joy.
Yeah, buy into yourself, buy into joy, buy into a practice, buy into failing.
Yes.
Like, suck at stuff.
Yeah.
This won't be my best chat with you.
Well, I mean, there's definitely some that I probably wouldn't share on the podcast. Actually, that's probably not true. I'd probably share most of it, because I think that we also I just want to take a moment to blow some smoke up Lee's ass, actually, before we finish, because this is something else that I think has been a bit of theme in the, you're one of my early recordings for this podcast, but I've had conversation and discussion with the other women who have confirmed that they will be on. And one of the things that we have all talked about, and I think something that's become very apparent to a lot of us over the last couple of years, is the importance of female friendships and how much they matter. And we're not taught how to break up with our female friends, especially for people who live where they kind of grew up and they've had this core group of friends their whole life. That can be an absolutely beautiful thing. And when I go home to Nova Scotia, there's a group of friends that I hang out with, and it's like no time has passed, and it's amazing. But I've also had friends that I've become really close to as an adult, and you have that awareness at some point that it's time for you to part ways, much the same way you would in an intimate or a romantic relationship. But we're not taught that that's a normal and natural thing for that to happen, and it can be quite hard and it can be quite jarring. But one of the things I've always appreciated about our friendship is that we're really good at sensing, and when we can't sense, we just fucking ask, like, okay, do you want me to just be sad with you, or do you want me to tell you to like fucking get over yourself and go do something about your problem? Like, do you want some tissues for your issue, or do you want advice? And I think that happens usually quite intuitively, and also I think both of us are really good at calling and being like, I'm really sad and I just want you to be like, poor me, okay? Yeah. Or like, I need you to be like, yeah, I need you on my team. And also, like, don't let me buy any more courses. Don't let me buy any more journals, which I'm pretty sure both of us have broken that promise to each other.
Not any courses, not any new journals. I'm writing on the paper I have, God damn it.
Excuse me. The Rupi Kaur poetry book, is that not like an arty journal thing?
That was before we made that.
No, it was not.
It was pre-order. I actually did pre-order months ago because I was super excited.
Okay.
And then the funniness of, though, I got that book. I opened and read the first couple of pages, and it's been sitting on my shelf because it made me nervous. So isn't that going to be fun?
I was like, guess what I'm going to be hammering you to pick up.
Right? I was like, I don't have time for this right now.
Yeah, I don't have I'm still on this journey. Let me finish that one first. Oh, we can't be on concurrent but we are. We're
No, I'm leading the journey. No. I'll be getting into that. But yeah, which is, in my opinion, like, what is it? If you're getting uncomfortable, you're probably heading the right way. So
absolutely,
it's a great book. You should get the Rupi Curl book.
And my course made you feel uncomfortable when you read the outline as well.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is me plugging myself. That's launching.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
But highly agree with that. If it's something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable,
yes,
like, just do it.
I'm writing a new series of flows that make me quite uncomfortable. Good. And I'm gonna be releasing them soon. So if you're interested in working with me and you're listening, Megan, you're gonna work with me anyway. I know you're interested.
Well, I work with you all the time. Like,
yeah. But if you want to come play,
yeah,
it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in Melbourne, we can do it in face to face. But if you're anywhere else, we got the internet here. There's one big.
Oh my gosh.
Pipe for all of Australia. It did it as I was talking.
I laughed. I just laughed. I have no idea what the audio will sound like on that. I'm going to leave it in because I just laughed so hysterically when you're like, we got the internet. And then you just went, and you like fully froze. It was like, oh, seriously, stop it. I thought Eclipse season was over. That's crazy. Okay, where is the best place for people to find you?
On Instagram at Lee Shiny, LEA_shiny. And I will
link all of that in the show notes as well.
Oh, and I'm on YouTube too at Lee Shiny.
Yeah,
I'm back.
Beautiful. Our phones hang up on us all the time. Now the internet's trying to hang up on us. So I'm going to leave it there. Huge thank you to you. I love you, buddy. You've undoubtedly made me a better mace artist. I mean, you made me into a mace artist and a mace coach, and you've made me a better person. So,
hey, I'm honored.
Yeah, I'm
honored that people want to come and do it, and it's the funnest thing ever to get to share.
It is. It really, yeah, we're as stoked about sharing it with people as they are when they get into the classes, which is just like watching. I mean, there's been a few people who've picked it up and they're like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. And I'm like, okay, be gone. But most people pick it up and they're like, holy shit, what is this? And they're just, because those are the people that you attract. So it's really exciting to get to do that. Thank you. And I will talk to you very soon. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And I will see you on the next episode of Sisters in Stoke.